Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, hello, my name is Kat, and for today's video, we're going to be talking about something that I kind of mentioned throughout the entire year a lot, is all of the luxury brand purchases that I regret from 2020. So some of these might not be a surprise, some of them might be because they're more recent purchases, but we're going to cover all of it so that you guys know what I think is trash and not worth your money, and what I think is. So let's just go ahead and jump right in. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is going to be foundation, and I feel like there are a few foundations that are no surprise to anybody. The first one being the Pat McGrath foundation. For me, that one did not work at all, and I tried at least 6 or 7 different times. I tried different primers, different moisturizers underneath. I tried blending it out with different setting sprays afterward just to see if that maybe helped, because sometimes when I use certain setting sprays when I'm done applying my makeup, it actually helps to smooth things out. But I just found that for whatever reason, the foundation felt so heavy on my face, really cakey. It was super patchy in certain areas and just did not want to blend very well for me at all, and it just looked so obvious that I was wearing foundation. And I don't have that one in front of me anymore because I actually ended up gifting it to my sister-in-law because she came out to visit, and it worked perfectly on her. You can only imagine my frustration when I am literally helping to apply this foundation to someone else and it is looking beautiful on her and looked like trash on me. So super duper upset about that, but it did at least go to a good home where I'm sure that it'll be used, so it did not, at least money-wise, go to waste. But oh, I was real bummed about that one. And the next one, no surprise, is going to be the Charlotte Tilbury foundation. This is the Airbrush Flawless Foundation. Stays all day and night. This guy... So the packaging on all of these at least is really nice. The Pat McGrath one and the Charlotte Tilbury one, super heavy glass that they are in, really bougie. So at least from like a packaging perspective, it's worth your coin. But of all of the foundations that I've tried, drugstore, luxury, regular, like middle of the road pricing, whatever it ends up being, this is the worst foundation I've ever used. It literally, not only did it feel heavy on my skin, it was so cakey, and you could literally see every single pore on my face. And I don't mean like if you came like right up to here that you could see it. I mean like from a distance. From a distance. It looked like my face was dirty because that was how much of the pores you could see. So super gross. So this definitely for me was a no-go. Was really upset about that. And the final foundation is the Tom Ford foundation. Now I did just purchase this, like, I want to say maybe a month or 2 ago, something like that. This is the Traceless Soft Matte Foundation. Super duper pricey, but it's in plastic, not glass. So worth your price for the packaging, not worth it for the packaging. And then it, like, instead of having like a pretty lid that you can pull off that, you know, is really nice, this guy, you just turn it and it opens. The foundation itself isn't terrible, but my gripe with it is if I am shelling out the kind of money that I did for this, not terrible are not the words I should be using to describe it. That's all I'm gonna say, because I feel like if you are getting a luxury foundation and you are shelling out like $100, I want the foundation to actually literally make my skin look flawless. And I can definitively say that it wasn't terrible. It definitely emphasized the pores around my nose, but the majority of everywhere else was okay. It was a good shade match. But the other odd thing, it smells terrible. And I don't mean that it smells terrible in a, like, it went bad terrible. I mean like it has that for whatever reason luxury brands love doing the perfume thing. This guy definitely has a perfumey smell that is much like your grandmother's used socks. So it's not a good smell, and it also like has a little bit of a chemical-y scent underneath as well. Yummy. So just meh, just not worth the money in my opinion at all. And I feel like that is my primary gripe with the majority of the luxury products, is not that the majority of them are terrible, aside from this guy being terrible. The rest of them are mediocre at best, but for the pricing that you are having to pay on there, mediocre should never be the term used. So that brings me to the next thing, which is going to be concealer. And I have the Charlotte Tilbury concealer here as well. The Pat McGrath concealer I ended up gifting to my sister-in-law as well, because she should just have both of them because they both worked out great for her. And the Pat McGrath concealer, I will say, was not bad. It did a decent job. It wasn't overly cakey under my eyes. It blended out all right. But again, I don't feel like for the cost that things should be all right. I have other drugstore concealers and a few other regular ones, like the NARS one that is just outstanding. Obviously that's not a drugstore brand, but price-wise, all of them are less expensive than a Pat McGrath or a Charlotte Tilbury. And so I feel like if you're paying again the money, you should be getting a better product. And this concealer was not good. It didn't blend out well. It took forever because it's a little clicky thing to get the stuff to come out on the sponge. And when you get it on the sponge and you apply it, it's not great. And because I didn't want to be like super unsanitary with this, because I feel like this sponge is just super full of bacteria, so I was using my finger primarily to pat it in, and did not blend in well. It didn't look good at all, and so I did not feel like this concealer was worth it either. So that's a no for both of the Charlotte Tilbury complexion products. Then for a primer, I have the, it's controversial, the Tatcha Silk Canvas that is the liquid version. So I have both. I have the regular silk canvas that's in the little tin that is like your putty primer, and then I also have the liquid one, obviously. And the regular putty primer I find works really, really well for smoothing out my pores, making them less visible. So I primarily really like to use it around my nose and then the top portion of my cheeks, because those are the areas where my pores are most visible. And so I will apply it there and then do like a hydrating primer around the rest of my face to help mask the dryness that rims like the sides of my face. And that works out great. Have not had any complaints on that whatsoever. However, the liquid one is not as good as the regular putty primer, and on top of that, for me, for whatever reason, it leaves like this streaky white cast where it's like you just get like these streaks of it where you have to keep blending and like smooshing it out, and it feels like it just isn't blending into the skin, where I eventually just like have to like attempt to sort of wipe it away for whatever reason, that the excess is just there. And so that is very, very frustrating for me, because the regular one, oh, the dog for today, the regular one works really, really well. And so I'm like, I don't understand why the liquid one works less well, especially when it comes to blending in. You would think that a liquid would work better than a putty to blend into your skin, but it doesn't. And so it's been super frustrating, and this one to me was not worth the amount of money that I had to spend on it. And pro tip, for the regular primer from Tatcha, I would recommend just getting the little trial size ones, because I use that frequently and I still haven't even made it through the first one of those trial sizes, and I have 2 of them, and those are not super duper expensive. And so I would recommend just getting one of those if you're wanting to test it out. I think that's one of the things that I really like when brands offer, is the little trial sizes, so you can really see, and it's a large enough amount clearly that I can just keep using it and have many, many attempts to try it out. So I would recommend that if you guys haven't tested out the Tatcha Silk Canvas yet, get the little tub of the putty one. Moving on to bronzer, we have from Chanel the, I'm not even gonna attempt to say that, it's all in French and I don't speak French. It's in the shade Sand, and the packaging again is cute. It came like in a little velvet bag, very reminiscent of the Tom Ford little baggie that bronzer came in. And it is nice with like a little pop top to open. You get a little brush in there, and then a nice little covering thing, and then the bronzer itself, which is inside of there. First thing that I hate about this is the smell. Yet again, we have a luxury product that is overdoing it on the perfume. It smells overly flowery. I don't know, it's not good, and it's definitely very, very powdery. If you're using any kind of poofy brush with it, it just kind of goes everywhere. And so I didn't like the consistency of the powder itself, and again the smell. And it's not one of those ones where after you've blended it out, kind of like the Physicians Formula one that has a very, very thick coconutty smell to it. After you've applied it to your face, the smell does dissipate. This stays perfumey for a really, really long time. I'm not a fan of that purchase at all. Then we have from Estee Lauder the Sumptuous Extreme Lash Multiplying Volume Mascara. And thank goodness I just have this in the trial size because it was not great. I was less than impressed. First off, what is the size of this wand? Like, this is huge. Gonna be a lot of innuendos on size on this video, guys, but I felt like the application of it was not easy because of the size of the brush, and I know that the regular size mascara has the same size bristly applicator, and so I don't like that. The formula itself, I didn't feel like it did anything as far as like thickening my eyelashes or making them appear elongated or anything like that. I was very disappointed with it because I didn't feel like I was getting anything out of it. The one positive though was that this guy at least did not have a bad scent to it. Unlike the Yves Saint Laurent or YSL mascara that I had gotten many months ago at the beginning of the year, I have since decluttered that. It was very disappointing because it was absolutely beautiful. The packaging was very nice. The color of the mascara was this like jet black but had like silver sparkle in with it, and so it looked like it would just be absolutely beautiful on your eyes. And instead it did nothing.
You had one job.
It literally was as if I was not applying anything, and it seemed like it was super duper dried out, even though I had just bought it. When you would first take the stick out of the applicator, it didn't seem like it was dried out, but I was getting nothing when I was putting it on my face. And the other thing about that product was the stank coming off of it. You could literally smell that mascara from like the next house over. It reeked of that perfume scent. It was it was like in my throat. Oh god, it was so bad. And so I just, regardless of the formula, even if the formula had been amazing, which it wasn't, but even if it had been, I would never be able to use that mascara because the smell alone was literally nauseating.
You're a nasty, wasty skunk.
So don't recommend that if you are someone that does not appreciate perfume smells. That, and this guy especially, and these are the perfumey ones that I don't recommend. If you want a nice perfume though, the Natasha one does smell nice. I will give it that. Moving on to the next face product though, we have from Hourglass, and thank God I only got one of these, but this is the Incandescent Strobe Light, and this is the ambient shade. My thought was that since it says strobe light, that it would mean that it is very, very bright. This is the color of the shade inside of there. I'm gonna use my finger to show you guys. There it is. And while it looks nice right there, it kind of almost comes across more as like a setting powder, like a pressed setting powder, because it's just, there's not a ton of iridescent shine going on with it. It's just very matte, light beige. And so I didn't feel like I was getting a ton of glow. And so the Hourglass product to me just did not seem good as far as highlighters go. It was very, very disappointing. Even if you were just wanting like a soft glow, like a light highlighter, because you don't want like a super powerful highlight, which I love a super strong highlight. To me, the Super Glow from Natasha Denona is what I use when I'm going for a natural highlight, because I like to be seen from literally outer space. But this guy just, like already just using my finger on there to apply it, it is somewhat visible, but then as soon as I take a brush to just moderately blend it out so that it's not just a straight line on my face, it blends into nothing to where you can't see it at all. For the amount of money that I'm paying, I want my highlighter to be visible. And so I don't know if the intent with these was to have them be more of like a translucent glow, perhaps. Maybe, but as far as like an actual outright highlighter, this did nothing for me. So I was very, very disappointed with that. And then finally, we're gonna talk about a couple eyeshadow palettes, because if there's one thing you're gonna spend a lot of money on, it's eyeshadow. And that is what inspired the look for today, was that I had seen on the Natasha Denona Instagram page a look that was very similar to this, where it had like the navy on the outside, and then they were using one of the multi-chromes from the Trichrome palette on the inside. And I can definitively tell you that the multi-chromes that I have on the inside of my eye right now are not from the Natasha Denona palette. They are a combination of Terra Moons and Cleonda, because I tried using both because I did pick up a couple liquid multi-chromes from Natasha Denona. I tried using the liquid chrome and I tried using the palette, and neither of them were showing up the way that I wanted them to. So I went to my tried and true multi-chromes from my indie brands, and boom! This is the multi-chrome look that we end up with on my lids. Also, BT dubs, this is the first time I'm doing a cut crease, and you know, while I don't think it's the best, I don't think it's the worst job either. But speaking of Natasha Denona, for the palettes, I have the Love palette. While the shadows are not terrible in here, this is the color story. Close that so I'm not blinding you guys, as much at least. So this is the palette, and the shadows are not awful, but they're also not, I feel like, the worth the amount that you would spend for it. I think that's my biggest critique of literally all of the Natasha Denona palettes that I have, is that the shadows are good. They're not bad quality by any means, but they're not great. You know, they're not $125 great like the Trichrome palette. They're not $250 some great like the green and brown palette that I got. And the packaging, I feel like it's like hard plastic packaging. Like, I know that McGrath has the hard plastic that's the black packaging, but it has like a gold bar thing underneath, so you really feel special. This is just a plastic container to me. Like, it doesn't feel overly awesome. The only thing that I do like that the Natasha Denona palettes have is the holes in the back, so that you could potentially depan the shadows if you wanted to like move them around or mix and match from different palettes. I do like that aspect of it, but from like do I think it's worth the money? Not really. Like, I think you're better off to get like the little 5-pan palettes that she has, that she sells, that are like the mini versions, because the mini ones, at least, like, you're getting, you know, what could be combined to have a nice eye look, but you're not having to shell out nearly as much money, and so you can still get the good quality without breaking the bank. Especially, there are several shades in here that are kind of similar to each other. You know, you have up top here, the Lifetime shade and the Transparent shade are both very similar, kind of light shimmers. Then you have Heart and Heartbeat, which are two very similar, deeper red shades. Then you have, you know, Soul, Intense, and Valentine, which are almost three very, very similar matte, lighter, peachy shades. And so there were just a lot of things on there where I felt like they were similar to each other, where you could have made this so much more than what it was. And so just kind of disappointed with that. And along those same lines of that the quality is good, but I feel like you're not getting your money's worth, is Viseart. So I have two palettes from Viseart that I got, and one of them, thank goodness, came in a BoxyCharm, because that way it at least wasn't me that was spending a shit ton of money. But this guy is essentially valued at $80. What kind of, like, this is literally like Wet n Wild level packaging. This is not good packaging at all. And even though the quality of the shades on the inside is very good, again, there's a lot of really common shades amongst the entire thing. You know, that entire top row is gonna look pretty much the same regardless of what you do, aside from maybe the almost white one on the end. And then you've got like two very similar gray shades, like three very similar brown shades. It's all very similar, and I can't get over this fucking packaging. Like, what even is this? This is just trash. And at least the other palette that I got, the packaging is cuter. Like it has the typical Viseart packaging of like the little envelope, and then you have the shades on the inside. But this thing is tiny for what you're paying. Like these are the tiniest little squares. Like if you look at that in comparison to just like even the Natasha Denona palette, like look at the size differential of those squares. Like these are like half the size of these, and it's just like, what is even happening, you know? And the quality isn't terrible. Like we can swatch a few just so you guys can see. It's not terrible, but it's also like not great. Those are literally the worst swatches ever. What kind of beauty guru are you even? You know, I feel like the purple is pretty, but it's not overly pigmented. Like you can barely see it right there. Like let me get a lot more of a swatch going, really deepen that up. And you can still barely see it. So it's just mediocre to me, and I don't feel like for the cost that you are paying for Viseart that it should be mediocre. Do I think that the mattes are really good? Yes. But again, this is a ton of the same shades, and so I would never spend $80 on that. I just wouldn't. And so that is my primary critique for the eyeshadows, is that if you're going to be charging me that kind of money, the quality better be outstanding and the packaging better be outstanding. And I feel like it falls flat in both regards. That was a bit of a rant to end the year. And so, you know, let me know in the comments down below what your guys' thoughts are. If you've had any attempts at some luxury brands that were a flop, or if you have any that are great, or if some of the products that I didn't like you love. I mean, clearly with the Pat McGrath one, that's a perfect example of how especially the cream products work so differently for different people, because they're absolute garbage for me, but they worked great for my sister-in-law. And so, you know, that I think that's one of the interesting and yet also unfair things, is that they don't work great for all of the same people. And I kind of wish it was just like it either works great for everybody or it doesn't work great for everybody, so that we can all have the same thoughts on it, instead of me being like, this was horrible, and then everyone else being like, what are you talking about? You're nuts. And me just sitting here being like, but you know, it is what it is. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video. Again, toss any thoughts down in the comments down below. I love being able to talk with you guys and start a conversation. If you made it to the end of the video and you have yet to subscribe, I think you should subscribe, because clearly you enjoyed the content enough to make it to the end of the video. That was my thought on luxury brands for 2020. Let's see what they bring in 2021, and you guys just have a good one.